What up and welcome to Something by Brian. I'm Brian and in today's video I'm gonna be designing my Ant-Man, I guess, and I'll be talking a bit about poses and how to practice those. Now this was recorded mid-February when Ant-Man was topical, and lucky for me it's a bit topical again because Jonathan Majors may or may not be a monster. I'll not touch that any further. I reserve judgment until everything is known. Anyway, as you can see, I got a reference picture from the first Ant-Man movie, and then I got a comic, a picture of his costume from the comic. And I chose the costume from the first movie because I really liked that, how tactile it was back then. I liked that the helmet felt real and like a motorcycle helmet that would go up and behind his head. I really miss that. The tactile feel of costumes in these Marvel and superhero movies in general. Everything is just nanotech now. Star-Lord's nanotech, Captain Marvel is nanotech. I guess it made sense with Iron Man and Black Panther, but now even Ant-Man's nanotech? Come on. Put some real clothes on these people, Marvel and Disney. Anyways, as you can see, I tried to really take a lot of inspiration from the helmet from the movie in my sketch. But I really like that old-timey superhero costumes we have from comics with a emblem on the chest and such. So I tried to implement the symbol from his comic costume on his chest while still keeping the red and black pattern from the movie version and those gray lines on his shoulders and those red shoulder pads. I really enjoy those. But I really think that in the movie, no, in the comic version, the gloves and the boots, that pop of blue, that's really nice too. So you can see that I've incorporated that as well. Well, you can't see that yet, but you can see there's a line on his forearm to indicate a glove. And now I'm just doing the legs way. Soon you'll see the boot part as well. And I added some weird spring-like situation because I think that helps to showcase his growing and shrinking powers. And I like that the costume is a bit functional as well. I like the button design in the movie version, so I tried to get that in on his gloves as well. And in the belt, I'm adding some small canisters for the pin particles and such. And for the pose, I chose a rather relaxed pose for this one because Scott Lang is sort of a bumbling idiot. That's why I really like him. He's just a good guy trying his best, right? He's not educated hero or soldier or anything. He's just trying his darndest to be the best Scott he can be. And I really enjoy that. So now that I'm done with the pose, I start with the line work. And a quick tip. This is super sarcastic, by the way. Never do this. Hide your hands if you don't want to spend time drawing hands, like behind the head. No, but really, I think it helps communicate this. He's scratching the back of his head because he don't know what really to do. This is a pretty static pose, and that can be fine. It's funnier to do them a bit more dynamic. And looking at it again here, I could definitely have put a bit of twist in the torso so that his shoulder and elbow would have come towards the camera a bit, like with his legs, that asymmetry where one of his feet are pointing towards us. I could definitely have done that in the torso as well to add a bit of, yeah, dynamic feeling to the pose. But I don't know, I like it. I like that he's just like standing facing us and scratching the back of his head, being like, whoops. And just taking a sip of coffee. You can see here now that the pattern of the costume is pretty similar to the movie version, but with that added black circle from the comic version. And the belt, I kept it pretty simple, but there are those canisters I talked about. And yeah, I really like Ant-Man, and I don't get why it's bombing that bad. Like, it's definitely not worse than Thor: Love and Thunder, like by a mile. I had a bunch of fun with it. At least you can check out my review if you want. There you can see the final piece of this drawing as well. I won't show everything in this video. Um, Another key feature when drawing poses is resizing and shaping stuff. That's only helpful if you're doing it digitally, which I almost always am. Um, it helps me a bunch, and it shouldn't be necessary, but I really enjoy the fact that I can get lost in a part of the body when I'm zoomed in, and then I zoom out, and then I'm like, whoa, that's a long forearm. I'm gonna shorten that up a bit. And then whoopsie, now it fits. And now we're on to the legs. And legs, I don't know, they're pretty standard legs. Again, this isn't the most dynamic pose. I wouldn't say it's stiff necessarily either. You see the pose from the reference, that isn't strictly dynamic either, but I wouldn't call that stiff. Uh, so it's all about those small things you can do to a pose where, as for example with the legs here, the asymmetry in the legs, and that asymmetry I carried up to the torso. While it isn't twisting, it's still asymmetrical, with his one arm hanging down the side and the other one going up behind his back. And yeah, here we do see, there I added those springy bits above the boots, you can see, to add the functionality. Also to break up, you'll see that when I get to coloring, but the red of his suit became pretty dominant. Uh, it is in the comic reference as well. So here, what I did, while the boots are still blue, and he get his little shorts here too, because superheroes should have trunks, and they'll become blue as well. But I still thought that red was very dominant, especially in comparison to the rest of his costume. So those springy bits I added above his boots, they're gonna be the same black as the emblem and arms, and I really felt that it tied this whole redesign together a bit. Overall, I'm really pleased with how this redesign turned out. I'm having a bunch of fun designing this, and I think the texture on this brush also really vibes with the sketchy feeling of this piece, and it's just the the trusting nature of Scott Lang. It just really comes through, I feel like. So we're and yeah, and I'm adding the shrinking growing button mechanism again to make the costume a bit more functional. Like if you look at the comic reference over there, there's nothing that indicates his powers whatsoever. And I like that with the movie version, that there is all these tubes and buttons and stuff. So I tried to incorporate that without being over detailed and adding in a bunch of little switches and wires and stuff like that. Now we're moving on to coloring, and I'm pretty much just uh, eye dropping the colors over from the comic one. I like the colors, the original Ant-Man colors, the red and the black and the blue. I think they're I think they work well together, and of course they do, because it's a proven design that's lasted the test of time, and he isn't the only hero wearing these collars, primary collars. Just, I know it's from when printers couldn't really do nothing else, but hey, if it looks good, it looks good. And limitations of the past technology is the future's strength. That doesn't really make any sense, but what I'm trying to say is that it looks good for a reason, and the artists that developed that way back when knew that, and therefore I can reliably just choose the same colors and know that they'll work well together and they'll be pleasing to the eye. Um, Again, I'm adding a bit more black to the costume than the original comic did, but it's really not that much actually. When you see the finished design from my piece, it's a bit more black on the side of the torso, and then his arms have gotten uh, black as well. But other than that, it's pretty much just the comic color scheme with a updated pattern and some more wires and tubes and stuff. But yeah, I'm really pleased with it. I'm using I think it's the chalk brush that's native to Procreate from the get-go, and I really like the texture feel of it, especially again for this sketchy look. It just brings a lot of, yeah, texture and, I don't know, playfulness to the drawing. So now the flats are done and I'm playing around with the line art. I almost always duplicate my lines and multiply and blur them a bit. I think it adds a lovely little bit of shade near the lines. And now I went to shade this. That's the chalk brush as well. Everything in this video I think is the chalk brush. I'm not sure if the lines are. Maybe they're dry ink. I can't really recall. If I remember, I'll put it in the description below. But if not, it's definitely, all the brushes are native to Procreate. I'm not huge on downloading and getting brushes. So, well, now we're in the Procreate view, and I'm just shading in his muscular torso, and I went with a purple shade, mostly because of the movie's poster, Quantumania. It was just a lot of purple. I guess it was due to Kang and his color scheme, and that he looms large and casts a wide shadow. Or maybe it was just looking good. I don't know how much thought went into it from Marvel's side of things. Sometimes they really they seem like they are thinking things through, and sometimes they're just doing stuff to do them. It's weird. But yeah, also purple is a very nice color for shadows in general, I think, but you just have to consider the space of your drawing. Like right now, he's on a beige background. That's why actually right now I'm adding in some beige bounce light into these shaded areas to make him feel more ingrained in the background, even though it's just a sketch pad. It's pretty generous of me to call this a background, but I will add some backgroundy elements. But the reason I went with Ant-Man and for a poses drawing was because in the trailer of the movie and in the movie there is a scene containing a bunch of Ant-Men running around and just stumbling into each other. And I was like, oh, that's fun. Now then we can just do a page full of Ant-Men. That's and practice a bunch of poses with just Ant-Man. And also that his power, especially in the comics, but also in the movies, they've actually managed to translate it quite well. But as he's shrinking or growing, his 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 pose from before he started his power, it lingers, and that's actually what I'm trying to achieve here with the chromatic aberration and the blur. And now I'm doing these lines, and they're actually what I'm trying to do is get it a bit of an animated feel, so that it looks like this shrinking is in motion. So I'm doing these outlines, and then I'm scaling them up, but just a bit, and then I'm duplicating them and scaling them up a bit more, because it gives it that, this is an animation term, but an ease in and ease out, where the distance between drawings, it shortens or it lengthens depending on whether the motion is speeding up or slowing down. So that was what I was trying to emulate here, and I'm actually quite satisfied with the result of how that looks. Now here we get the background, and I kept in mind that I had done purple shadows, so I did some purple, and in the left corner I did some green because I did some green lighting, highlighting. So there we have my beautiful, beautiful quantum realm, very simplified. It's a green and purple blur, but that's the background I went with. And now with the piece, with the costume and character designed, and the piece finally set up, it's about to I'm about to finally practice some poses, which was actually why I started this endeavor in the first place. And right off the bat, that helmet that caused me a bit of trouble because I couldn't really decide how far out from the face that mouthpiece should protrude. Um, so quite instantly, turning his head proved difficult, but I think I managed a pretty sweet spot. And later in this entire pose, as I've already stated, I like resizing stuff. His head is enormous right now, so later it will be shrunken down. But here I'm trying my best to really add some foreshortening and really keep the pose dynamic. And to do that, it can be really helpful to use what's called a line of action, and those can be many things, but the most typical ones are a C, S, or I curve, I think. um, and this would probably constitute a soft S curve if you take it from his left hand that he's holding up and then down to his right leg. That becomes like a soft S that flows throughout the pose and gives it this it just makes it visually interesting to look at. And overall I'm very pleased with the pose I'm coming up with here. I think that it's a quite nice. It looks like he's falling, which again, if you've seen the movie, he does quite accidentally stumble into the quantum realm, and that's the sort of feeling that I'm trying to capture here. That this isn't really something he's doing on purpose. He's just reacting to getting shrunken. That's why his arms are flailing about and his legs are also just spread out in every direction. There, now we shrunk that head down, and I think it's actually, I think it gets shrunken again later. But it's pretty fun. Uh, Normally, if you do poses and stuff, and maybe that's the best way to do a study, not to come up with a full character design and then starting to do that design in various poses, but instead do the tried and true tested method of figure uh, and gesture drawing and doing croquis and just like giving yourself 30 seconds, 2 minutes to look at a pose, preferably even still life drawings. But there are some great websites. I'll link them in the description, and you can use that as a reference and just really loosen up your drawing muscles and just getting the feel of just getting a shape down and really trying to um get that motion of the pose translated to a piece of paper. um and it can be really fun to do, and I definitely recommend it. But this was really fun to do as well, and somehow, for me at least, it's easier to stay focused when it's like my original thought and not just drawing from a reference. So uh, it might be the better practice, the other one, to sit down for like half an hour and just churn out these figure drawings and really focus on the shape language and the gestures and the line of action and really getting all of that to the paper. But for me, it's just more rewarding and easier to stay focused when I'm working on my own design and trying to come up with these poses and envisioning how the arm would do if, like, it's a difficult reference to find, right? On croquis websites, someone tumbling through the quantum realm. You can't really just look that up. So it's fun to challenge your imagination and be like, no, I think this is where the arm would go, even though if it's not the most natural state, it helps communicate the sense of scale and motion that I want to communicate. Um, but if you want proper poses drawing advice, you should probably do those figure skating and gesture skating, sketching, not skating. Fuck it, go figure skating as well. That sounds challenging and not something I have any expertise in. um, but here the lines are almost done again, so duplicate my original design. So we can just start color dropping once more, and you can look at that big head. Look how big that head is. This is almost a MODOK-sized head. How do you feel about MODOK in the movie? If you've seen Quantumania, did you like the design or not? I really liked it. I don't get all the hate it's getting. Like, it's meant to be upsetting. MODOK is meant to be upsetting to look at, and they just aced it. And I just think it's such a great take on the character. It's a great way to tie the trilogy together as well, bringing back Darren Cross. I thought it was brilliant, but apparently I'm in the minority on that one. And just in general with this movie, I really had a good time with it. I thought it was better than the sequel, and apparently I'm wrong in thinking that, or at least in the vast minority. It's not better than the first one. The first Ant-Man movie took everybody by surprise, but it's definitely better than the second one, I thought. Even though the second one had a pretty good villain. Like, all the Ant-Man movie has pretty good villains. Sorry, I'm talking about too much about the movie. But it's just, I'm I'm sad that it's bombing. I'm sad that Shazam 2 is bombing as well. Like, I don't mind Creed and John Wick doing great, but I just want the superhero wave of movies to continue forever, uh, because I love them. So hopefully this isn't a trend that will end the superhero reign supreme. I think they'll be fine. I think when Guardians comes out in a month, uh, it'll knock the box office right back where it's supposed to be. Even look like Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. That's not even that amazing. It's just a nostalgia fest, and it made all the money. So I don't think this is a commentary on the state of superhero movies. I just think it's subpar movies earning what they might deserve because better movies are available. And I haven't even seen Creed 3 or John Wick 4 yet, but yeah, I've heard good things. But again, I liked Ant-Man. I think I've shrunken his head now. I totally got the off track, but I think his head is finally at a proper size. I like to look at it at least now. I didn't before. And we're once again shading it in with the purple shade coming from the purple background in the distance. And yeah, I really like the foreshortening on the hand there, and yeah, I really enjoy this pose. I think it's very dynamic and engaging and fun, and yeah, it's that's a good pose. His right arm might be a bit too big. Like, the foreshortening on his left arm is great, but the right arm is a bit too big. I think if I'd shrunken that down a bit, it would look more like he's really twisting. But overall, I'm really pleased, and I'm really pleased that you can still see the shrinking button on his glove, and like that all that technical stuff shines through in the design. Uh, so that's something I'm really pleased with. And soon, when the lighting is done on it, I'm going to do that shrinking effect again, and think it'll be a bit more easy to see what I was talking about with those shrinking lines and the blur that I created. I like the effect. I think it's very successful in communicating that he's shrinking fast and he's shrinking uncontrollably. So yeah, we make him a bit translucent and then turn him a bit to make him more in line with that first pose. And then we do some chromatic aberration. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm doing. I can't recall. Okay, it's been a month since I did this drawing, but yeah, now we're doing the shrinking lines, and I'm just tracing the outline. There it was, the chromatic aberration. I love that effect. I use it way too much and I overdo it, but I just think it looks so cool. Yeah, now I trace the outline, and when I'm satisfied with that, I scale it up a bit, and then I duplicate it, and then I scale it up a bit more, so that the distance between the original drawing and the first shrinking outline is smaller than the distance between the first shrinking outline and the second shrinking outline. You see there? That's the first one, scaling it up a bit, and duplicating and scaling it up a bit. And then we, change the opacity, and then I go back and I erase the parts that's overlapping the drawing, because right now it's really confusing to look at, but there, then I clean it up, and I just really like the effect. And then he keeps shrinking, and that was why I thought it was a good character to practice poses with, because he just keeps shrinking or growing. And even in the movie there's multiple of him that's just shrinking and or growing, so you could just do it forever, fill out the page with Ant-Men in different sizes doing different poses. This last one is pretty fun too, also with a very clear line of action, if you ask me. This is a C line, if you remember the terms from earlier. And yeah, it's just with poses, it's just doing it over and over again, just keep doing poses, keep doing different poses, really push them, challenge them, force that foreshadowing, break the pose, like really try to see how far you can push it, to see if it holds up, if it's a good way to figure out how far you can actually push a design, is just to how far. Look at characters like Spider-Man. He keeps moving in ways that are impossible to move, but yeah, I won't keep repeating myself. You can see the finished drawing if you go to my Quantumania short review. I think that's all I had for today on poses. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that I'll see you again. And if you like the drawing, consider liking the video. And if you like the video, consider subscribing. Thanks. Take care.